Joining me now is Nicole Grajewski, a specialist on nuclear strategies from Sciences Po here in Paris. Nicole, thank you very much for your time. Given the heavy bombardment that we're witnessing in Iran, do we have any idea of what impact, if any, it has had on the Iranian nuclear program?
It's unclear at the moment. I mean, the Iranian nuclear program faced a lot of setbacks after October 7th. And also including after the June 2025 war. Whether this be covert or actually kinetic, as we saw in June 2025, but the current strikes have not really targeted the majority of the concerned nuclear facilities. And at the moment, the highly enriched uranium still remains underground and within the tunnels that are much more deeper than any kind of conventional means can access, at least in terms of collapsing these structures.
And in regards to that stockpile of enriched uranium, what exactly is needed to remove it?
It depends. I mean, there is discussions about having a ground contingency remove it and excavate it. The tunnels have been largely bombed. However, there's some evidence that maybe some of the tunnels are accessible. It would primarily need, at least international specialists who have dealt with, these kind of materials and also access. So whether that is done with the kind of will of the Iranian government or perhaps, in terms of a special operation, that's unclear. But you definitely would need international oversight or at least specialists on nuclear materials.
So you're talking there of possibly boots on the ground.
Well, that's essentially being debated right now by the Trump administration because the tunnels at Isfahan have not been able to be reached by conventional means. There are discussions floating in the United States about potentially boots on the ground to retrieve this. Though, I mean, I'll add the caveat is that U.S. objectives in this war change on a daily basis, and so it's entirely plausible that this does not occur.
Is there not a danger, though, of a radiation leak, given that, the country is now turned into a war zone, and especially in view of that heavy bombing?
Primarily, the concerns with radiation would actually happen at the Bushehr nuclear power plant, which is in southern Iran. But that's in cold shutdown, so they're essentially taking safety precautions there. In terms of the other part of the Iranian nuclear program, most of the concerns are actually not radiation, but the chemical effects of some of the materials and what happens there. So it's not so much a radiation effect like Chernobyl, but it does pose potential problems environmentally and also to the population. I will just say that, with Isfahan, the remaining of the highly enriched uranium is in canisters, and so they're not as much of a concern.
One thing that's happening here in Paris today is a summit aimed at boosting the use of civilian nuclear power. And of course, it comes as the war with Iran highlights the dangers of relying on fossil fuels. With your expertise, may I ask you if we're likely to see a significant shift in other countries seeking to access nuclear energy?
I mean, under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, countries have a right to civilian nuclear energy. Of course, France is one of the recognized countries as a nuclear weapons state within that, but France also has a very large civilian nuclear energy industry. And so there's a distinction between, peaceful uses of civilian nuclear energy and the kind of use of nuclear energy that we kind of saw Iran doing, which was holding this threshold status where they essentially used it to break out to a nuclear weapon. Now, that's not what's happening today in Paris. This is much more about the civilian side of it. And I think that the appeal, especially because of climate change for nuclear energy, is increasing. But of course, there are concerns of the broader nuclear order in general.
And coming back to the war in Iran, do you see this military operation indeed being significant in reducing the nuclear threat that the country was seemingly posing to others in the region, not to mention across the world?
Not necessarily. If anything, I think this war is going to galvanize a certain faction within Iran, whether or not the regime survives, but whatever comes next, that the value of having a nuclear weapon is actually one that is rapidly deployable and one that you can, create quite quickly. Whereas Iran in the past took quite a while. They engaged in diplomacy. I think what these current strikes and this current war is showing kind of the value of having a covert program. And so I'm a little bit more concerned about what happens next and the decisions that are made by whatever leadership takes over in Iran.
Nicole Grajewski, a specialist on nuclear strategies from Sciences Po, thank you.